Hello. So in this particular session, we will be covering up the part B of Joey. Okay. So what we've been given is that, and basically we've been asked about. So Zoe's share capital is comprised of A class shares, right? These shares have been correctly classified as equity. Zoe is considering issuing following instruments: B class shares that are not mandatorily redeemable. Okay, so you don't have to give any equity. Okay, it's not mandatory, but can contain a call option allowing Zoe to repurchase them. Okay, so dividends would be payable on the B shares if and only if dividends are paid on A ordinary shares. So there is no obligation to pay shares. There is no mandatory obligation as well. Okay, so it's not redeemable into equity, and then it's not thingy. Dividend is not payable. Okay, so shares options will give the counterparty to buy a fixed number of ordinary shares for a fixed amount of 10 million. So fixed, no variation. That means if there is a variability, it will be considered as financial liability, right? So directors of Zoe require advice as to whether the financial instrument should be classified as debt or equity in accordance with IS 32 financial instruments presentation. Moreover, they wish to know the board's proposal as outlined in the recent discussion paper DPE 2018 financial instrument with characteristics of the entity that would change the classification of these two entities. So, in accordance with IFRS 32, discuss whether the B class shares and the share options should be classified as financial liability or not. Okay, let's discuss it. So, debt and equity, right? Debt or equity. That's the question. IAS 32 financial instruments presentation says that a financial liability is a contractual contractual obligation to deliver either cash or another financial asset to the holder, right? Equity is the residual interest after deducting all of its liabilities, right? However, a contract may involve the delivery of the entity's own equity instruments or contract will be settled by the equity in by the contract will be settled by the entity by delivering fixed number of its own equity instruments in exchange for cash or another financial asset is an equity instrument. Okay, if it is by fixed number of equity interest, okay, so if there is any variability in the number of own equity instruments to be delivered, then the contract is a financial liability. Okay, okay, if there is any variability, it's a financial liability, as simple as that. Okay, so in case of B shares, right, isn't that what the question is asking us? So I can close this thing. So B shares, right, so not mandatory redeemable, but call option allowing Joey to repurchase them. Dividends are payable if and only if payable in ordinary, right? The B shares should be classified as equity because there is no contractual obligation to pay the dividends or to redeem the instruments. Dividends can only be paid on the B shares if dividend is or have been declared on A shares. However, in either case, in either, there is no contractual obligation because dividend declaration is not mandatory. Okay, always remember that. So that's for B shares. And then share options. Share option has a fixed number, right? Options, the classification of the share option is dependent on whether there is variability in the number of equity shares delivered, right? Zoe will settle the contract by issuing a fixed number of its own equity instrument in exchange for for cash, right? Cash. So it is classified as an equity instrument, right? So that is also done. Number two will be exposure draft, right? Exposure draft. How will that basically affect? That's what it's trying to know from us, okay? So in case of exposure draft, what has happened is that basically what is the proposed treatment is that in the discussion paper, the board proposed to classify financial instruments as a liability if they if they show or if they exhibit exhibits if it exhibits following characteristics. Right, the first thing being, this is a bullet point. Come on, man. Where is bullet? Okay, so it's not happening. Anyways, so N, unavoidable. Unavoidable. Okay, it's like onerous contract kind of thing. An unavoidable contractual obligation to transfer cash or another financial asset at a specified time other than liquidation and slash or. So it could be and as well, and it could be or as well. So it's not yet decided. If it's and, then both will be important. If it's or, either or. Okay. Or unavoidable contractual obligation